Hello there, traveler. Welcome to Mild History. Before we begin tonight's quiet story, take a deep breath. Where are you listening from? Maybe from the warmth of your bed, maybe wrapped in a blanket as the night settles in. Wherever you are, welcome. You're safe here, and tonight we're going back in time to the Viking Age. It is dawn in the north. The air bites softly against the skin. The fjord is still and silver, a mirror of the pale sky. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the sun hides behind thin mist, reluctant to rise. You stand at the edge of a longhouse, its walls breathing smoke from the hearth within, the faint scent of pine resin and wool mingling in the air. This is your world, the world of a Shieldmaiden. Not a fantasy hero from song or saga, but a real woman who worked, fought, endured, and sometimes led in the shadow of the northern winds. Your name is not written in any surviving saga. No skald sang of your deeds. But your life, like that of many forgotten Viking women, was shaped by labor, loyalty, and quiet strength. You woke before the men, when the world was still dim and the cold from the sea crept under every doorway. Inside, the longhouse smells of smoke, straw, and salt. The low roof beams are blackened with soot from years of fire. The floor is packed earth, soft under your feet, scattered with straw to keep it dry. Around the walls hang shields, fur cloaks, and dried herbs. The slow crackle of fire fills the silence, a rhythm that marks every morning. You pull on a thick woolen dress, dyed deep with woad and madder root. Over it, a layer of coarse linen, then the weight of your cloak. The brooch at your shoulder is plain but strong, hammered bronze, shaped like a knot. You fasten your hair with a wooden pin, pulling it back from your face. The world outside still smells of salt and frost. Your hands are calloused, not from war, not yet, but from weaving, hauling nets, and grinding grain. Every Shieldmaiden began not with battle, but with endurance. The work of survival was a kind of training, a test of patience and will. Your people live between sea and forest, between hunger and harvest. Each winter is a challenge, each spring a fragile promise. To be Viking was not to live for battle, but to live despite it. The storms came when they pleased. The soil gave what it would. And when men left for distant raids, the women stayed, to lead, to guard, to mend. You step out into the wind. The village stirs, smoke rising from roof vents, dogs barking, someone shouting near the boats. You nod to an older woman carrying a basket of dried fish. Her hair is silver, her face worn, but her eyes are alive. She has seen too many winters to fear them now. You think of your mother, and of her mother before her, all women who kept the longhouse running, who knew that courage didn't always wear armor. But today feels different. There's a tension in the air, a hum of expectation. Beyond the fjord, a ship waits, sleek and dark, carved with a dragon's head. Men gather near it, their voices low. You watch from the edge of the path, unnoticed, and your fingers tighten on the edge of your cloak. A Shieldmaiden's story begins not with her first battle, but with her first choice. To stay or to go, to live the quiet rhythm of hearth and home, or to follow the path of blood and honor and see what lies beyond the sea. For now you return to the fire. You stir the morning porridge, barley, water, a pinch of salt. You listen to the sea through the gaps in the wood. You trace your name in the ash on the hearthstone, though no one will ever read it. And you think, what would it mean to fight? To stand beside the men, shield to shield, in the roar of battle. Outside, someone calls for volunteers. The chief's voice echoes against the cliffs. He speaks of England, of rich villages, of silver and honor. Your heart stirs. It beats once, slow, uncertain. Then again, stronger. The sound of axes sharpening fills the air. You look down at your hands. They are steady. You do not know yet that you will hold a sword. You do not know that your name will be whispered by your grandchildren as a story. But something inside you shifts. Later, when the longhouse grows quiet and the fire burns low, you sit by the doorway. The stars are out, cold and distant, scattered like sparks across the black. You imagine your future among them, not as a wife, not as a servant, but as a fighter, a woman of the sea and the sword, a Shieldmaiden.
Hello there, traveler. Welcome to Mild History. Before we begin tonight's quiet story, take a deep breath. Where are you listening from? Maybe from the warmth of your bed, maybe wrapped in a blanket as the night settles in. Wherever you are, welcome. You're safe here, and tonight we're going back in time to the Viking Age. It is dawn in the north. The air bites softly against the skin. The fjord is still and silver, a mirror of the pale sky. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the sun hides behind thin mist, reluctant to rise. You stand at the edge of a longhouse, its walls breathing smoke from the hearth within, the faint scent of pine resin and wool mingling in the air. This is your world, the world of a Shieldmaiden. Not a fantasy hero from song or saga, but a real woman who worked, fought, endured, and sometimes led in the shadow of the northern winds. Your name is not written in any surviving saga. No skald sang of your deeds. But your life, like that of many forgotten Viking women, was shaped by labor, loyalty, and quiet strength. You woke before the men, when the world was still dim and the cold from the sea crept under every doorway. Inside, the longhouse smells of smoke, straw, and salt. The low roof beams are blackened with soot from years of fire. The floor is packed earth, soft under your feet, scattered with straw to keep it dry. Around the walls hang shields, fur cloaks, and dried herbs. The slow crackle of fire fills the silence, a rhythm that marks every morning. You pull on a thick woolen dress, dyed deep with woad and madder root. Over it, a layer of coarse linen, then the weight of your cloak. The brooch at your shoulder is plain but strong, hammered bronze, shaped like a knot. You fasten your hair with a wooden pin, pulling it back from your face. The world outside still smells of salt and frost. Your hands are calloused, not from war, not yet, but from weaving, hauling nets, and grinding grain. Every Shieldmaiden began not with battle, but with endurance. The work of survival was a kind of training, a test of patience and will. Your people live between sea and forest, between hunger and harvest. Each winter is a challenge, each spring a fragile promise. To be Viking was not to live for battle, but to live despite it. The storms came when they pleased, the soil gave what it would, and when men left for distant raids, the women stayed, to lead, to guard, to mend. You step out into the wind, the village stirs, smoke rising from roof vents, dogs barking, someone shouting near the boats. You nod to an older woman carrying a basket of dried fish. Her hair is silver, her face worn, but her eyes are alive. She has seen too many winters to fear them now. You think of your mother, and of her mother before her, all women who kept the longhouse running, who knew that courage didn't always wear armor. But today feels different. There's a tension in the air, a hum of expectation. Beyond the fjord, a ship waits, sleek and dark, carved with a dragon's head. Men gather near it, their voices low. You watch from the edge of the path, unnoticed, and your fingers tighten on the edge of your cloak. A Shieldmaiden's story begins not with her first battle, but with her first choice. To stay or to go, to live the quiet rhythm of hearth and home, or to follow the path of blood and honor and see what lies beyond the sea. For now, you return to the fire. You stir the morning porridge, barley, water, a pinch of salt. You listen to the sea through the gaps in the wood. You trace your name in the ash on the hearthstone, though no one will ever read it. And you think, what would it mean to fight? To stand beside the men, shield to shield, in the roar of battle. Outside, someone calls for volunteers. The chief's voice echoes against the cliffs. He speaks of England, of rich villages, of silver and honor. Your heart stirs. It beats once, slow, uncertain. Then again, stronger. The sound of axes sharpening fills the air. You look down at your hands. They are steady. You do not know yet that you will hold a sword. You do not know that your name will be whispered by your grandchildren as a story. But something inside you shifts. Later, when the longhouse grows quiet and the fire burns low, you sit by the doorway. The stars are out, cold and distant, scattered like sparks across the black. You imagine your future among them, not as a wife, not as a servant, but as a fighter, a woman of the sea and the sword, a Shieldmaiden.
Thyra begins to smile when you train. Not often, but once in a while, when you block cleanly or land a hit, she gives a small nod. You learn fast, she says. You've got fight in you. The next morning, she hands you a real sword. Iron, dull-edged, but heavy. You lift it, slower than you'd like, and the weight surprises you. It feels alive, like something that could decide its own path. Respect it, Thyra says. You nod, gripping the hilt tight. The cold metal presses against your palms. That day, she teaches you footwork, how to step back, to pivot, to slide forward on the balls of your feet. Your movements are clumsy, but steady. Every mistake becomes a lesson, every bruise a mark of progress. As the sun sets, you stand together, breath misting in the fading light. For the first time, she says, quietly,
you might survive. The first true test comes not from Thyra, but from the men. They've seen you training for weeks, your small frame behind that heavy shield, your face streaked with sweat and ash. At first they laughed, quietly, not cruelly, but dismissively, as if you were a child playing at war. But now, curiosity grows where mockery once was. On a day when the air smells of seaweed and rain, the chief's son, tall, broad-shouldered, not yet 30, tosses his axe aside and calls out to you, "If you train like a warrior, then fight like one!" You do not answer. You only look to Thyra. She nods once. "Go on." The men form a loose circle, boots pressing into the wet sand. The tide laps gently nearby, as if listening. You step forward, your shield heavy, your sword dull but solid. Your heart beats fast, not from fear, but from focus. He grins. "Don't worry, little one. I'll try not to break you." His swing comes fast, heavier than anything Thyra has thrown at you. You block late, the strike ringing through your bones. You stagger, almost falling. Laughter ripples through the circle. You reset your footing. He swings again. You raise your shield higher this time, catching the blow. Your knees buckle, but you don't fall. Another strike, then another. You feel your arms screaming, your breath short. The sound of the waves fades. All that remains is your heartbeat. Then, without thinking, you shift to the side, pivoting the way Thyra taught you. The blow misses. Your sword finds his shield and slides against the wood with a dull scrape. He stops, surprised. You both freeze, the cold wind between you. No one laughs this time. When the match ends, the men disperse quietly. Some glance back at you, not with amusement, but with thought. You return to the longhouse and sit near the hearth, arms trembling. Thyra brings you water and says nothing. Only when the room grows still does she whisper, "Now they see you." That night, as you lie awake, every bruise throbs like memory. You trace each ache and think of what it means, not pain, but proof. Each mark, a reminder that you stayed. In the days that follow, the chief himself watches your training. He says nothing for a long while, then tells Thyra quietly, "She has courage, but courage burns fast. See that she learns patience before pride consumes her." And so your lessons change. Thyra stops striking you with a stick and begins to make you wait. You stand in the field holding your shield for hours, unmoving until your arm shakes. You balance stones on your wrists, learning to still the tremor. You kneel beside the fire to test your will against the sting of heat. Pain, Thyra says, is not your enemy. It's the voice that tells you where you are weak. At night, your body feels like it's made of lead. Still, you rise before dawn to fetch water from the frozen stream. The ice cracks under your bucket. Your hands ache, but you grip tighter. Sometimes, as you walk back, the early sun turns the frost to gold. The world seems almost gentle then. The hills softened by mist, the crows calling lazily above. You think of the stories sung in mead halls, tales of women who rode beside kings, who led raids, who were remembered. You wonder if they, too, had mornings like this, small, quiet, ordinary. You begin to understand something Thyra never said aloud. A Shieldmaiden's strength isn't only in the sword arm. It's in the stillness before battle, the long, dull hours when no one watches, the weight of duty carried in silence. Weeks stretch into months. The snow melts. You can now hold your shield for longer than most of the young men. You've learned how to fall without fear, how to land, roll, and rise again. One evening, the chief approaches. He carries no weapon, only a horn of ale. He sits beside you by the fire and studies the faint scars on your forearm. Then he nods and grins. When the ship leaves next, you'll go, not as a warrior, but as a watcher. You'll learn the sea.
Your throat tightens. You expected joy, maybe pride, but what you feel instead is quiet relief and the weight of something bigger than yourself. That night, Thyra sits with you outside, the stars sharp and clear. She passes you a small carved token, the image of a wolf etched into driftwood. "It's for luck," she says. You shake your head. "I don't believe in luck." She smiles faintly. "Good. Then believe in this: patience." The wind moves through the pines, a low and endless whisper. You sit together until dawn, and when the first rays of light spill across the fjord, you realize the truth Thyra has been teaching all along. Becoming a Shieldmaiden isn't about glory. It's about endurance, the will to bear weight, to wait, to rise again. Tomorrow, you will board the ship. Tomorrow, the sea will test everything you've learned. But tonight, you close your eyes to the sound of the waves, your sword by your side, and let sleep take you, like the tide, pulling you slowly toward your fate. The voyage north, wind, salt, and silence. Soft, low-paced narration, steady tone for sleep. Morning comes shrouded in fog. The fjord lies silent, wrapped in a white veil that hides the horizon. Somewhere beyond that mist, the open sea waits, endless, gray, and unknowable. You stand barefoot at the edge of the shore, the cold biting at your toes. The ship rests before you, a long, narrow vessel carved from pine and oak, its dragon-headed prow staring toward the unseen world. The hull glistens with frost. Men move quietly around it, checking ropes, stacking barrels, tightening sails. You keep your hands busy too, coiling line, patching a small tear in the sailcloth, fetching buckets of fresh water. The air smells of tar, salt, and wet wood. You hear the gulls first, their cries sharp, echoing against the cliffs. Then the chief's voice. "Board, we sail with the tide." Your heart beats once, heavy in your chest. You lift your small bundle, cloak, comb, a few dried herbs, and step aboard. The plank creaks beneath your weight. The wood feels alive, vibrating with the water below. Thyra stands near the mast, already steady on her feet. She nods when you find your place among the rowers. No words are needed. The men sit in 2 long rows, oars resting beside them. The chief stands at the stern, hand on the tiller. The sail is still furled, for now you will row. The order comes softly, row. The first pull is awkward, the second smoother. The third, you find the rhythm. The oars dip
into the water as one, pulling the ship forward through the fog. The sound fills the world. The creak of wood, the slow churn of water, the breath of 30 people moving together. Behind you, the village fades from sight. Only smoke remains, curling faintly above the mist. You don't look back. Hours pass. The fog thins. The world opens. The coastline stretches to your left, black cliffs streaked with white foam, the occasional green of moss and pine. The sky is low and gray, the wind cold, but steady. You pull your cloak tighter. Salt spray touches your face, cool and sharp. Your hands ache from rowing, but you say nothing. You glance toward Thyra. She's watching the horizon, face calm, eyes narrowed. "You'll get used to it," she says, after a moment. You nod. The sea, she explains, is like a temper, unpredictable, always testing. "Treat it like a god," she says quietly. "Respect it, and it might spare you. Defy it, and it will swallow you whole." You don't yet understand what she means, but by the time the day ends, you will. By midday, the wind changes. The sail unfurls, a square of faded red cloth that catches the light. The ship leans, cutting through the water faster now, oars lifted to rest. The men stretch their arms, some laughing, others silent. You listen to the sea's rhythm, the rush against the hull, the flap of the sail, the wind in the rigging. It feels eternal, as if it has always sounded this way. The world becomes smaller here, only sea, ship, and sky. Land disappears behind you. Ahead, there is only mist and motion. You begin to feel the sea's pulse, a gentle rise and fall that rocks you like breath. It's almost soothing, until the wind grows stronger. At first, it's only a shift, a deeper whistle through the ropes. Then a sudden gust. The sail snaps hard. The ship tilts. The chief shouts orders. Men leap to secure the lines. You grab the nearest post as water splashes over the side, drenching your cloak. The wind howls, a low, rising roar. The sea darkens, waves rolling higher, closer. You feel your stomach twist as the ship rises, then drops. For a moment, your feet leave the deck. Thyra moves past you, shouting above the storm, "Hold the line!" You reach for the rope, your hands slipping. Salt stings your eyes.
The ship creaks, groans, wood bending, ropes straining. A wave crashes against the bow, spraying everyone in icy water. Someone shouts a prayer to Thor. You pull the rope tighter, knuckles white. The cold seeps into your bones. Then, slowly, the storm begins to ease. The wind softens. The sea calms. The ship steadies. The men breathe hard, dripping wet, faces pale. The chief gives a nod. We live another day. Thyra leans against the mast, catching her breath. You stand beside her, trembling slightly. She glances at you and smiles, faint, tired, proud. "Well," she says, "now you've met the sea." You nod, though you can't quite speak. It feels alive still, the deck shifting underfoot, the wind whispering through your hair. But in that moment, amid the silence that follows the storm, you understand something deep. Survival is its own kind of courage. The rest of the day passes quietly. The men repair ropes, scrape the deck, check the oars. You help patch a small tear in the sail with coarse linen and beeswax thread. The sky turns pale gold by evening. The sea reflects it, calm now, soft as melted metal. You eat a small meal, dried fish, bread, and a mouthful of ale, and sit near the stern, watching the horizon fade into darkness. Tyra sits beside you. When I was your age, I thought strength was noise, shouting, fighting, making others listen. But the sea taught me different. She looks out across the dark water. Real strength, she says softly, is silence. The words linger. You don't answer. You just listen to the waves and to the slow, steady heartbeat of the ship against the water. That night, as you lie on a coil of rope beneath a wool blanket, the stars emerge, clear and cold above the open sea. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of the waves rock you towards sleep. For the first time, you understand the strange calm that comes after fear, the quiet acceptance that life, like the tide, moves with or without you. And as the ship drifts north through the endless dark, your story begins to change, quietly, like the sea beneath a rising moon. When morning comes again, the light is thin and gray, like mist captured in glass. The sea has quieted, rolling in long, slow breaths beneath the ship. A faint scent of pine drifts through the air. You rise from your blanket of coarse wool, shoulders stiff, hair damp with salt. Around you, the crew moves quietly. No laughter, no shouting. After a storm, no one speaks loudly. It's a rule of the sea. The men check the rigging, mend the ropes, and whisper soft thanks to the gods. You do the same in your mind, though you're not sure which god listens. Thor for strength, Njord for the sea, or perhaps none at all. Thyra catches your eye as she sharpens her knife with calm, rhythmic strokes. Land soon, she says, her voice almost lost in the wind. You follow her gaze northward. The horizon glows faintly, a pale strip of gray-green, the shape of distant coastline hidden in mist. Hours pass. The water grows shallower, turning from steel blue to dull green. You can see the white sand far below, the shifting shadows of kelp forests swaying like ghostly banners. Then, faint but clear, the sound of gulls again, and beyond them, the outline of trees. "Land!" someone shouts. The crew straightens. The chief gives the order to lower the sail. Oars dip into the water once more, pulling the ship toward the unfamiliar shore. As the coastline draws near, you can see cliffs streaked with dark moss, waterfalls cutting thin lines through the rock, and at their base a narrow stretch of beach, untouched, silent, waiting. When the hull scrapes the sand, the sound seems to echo for miles. No one moves for a moment. Even the sea seems to hold its breath. Then the chief speaks, voice low, out. You follow the others, stepping into cold, knee-deep water. It bites at your skin, but you wade forward until your feet meet solid ground. The sand is rough with shells and stones. The wind carries the smell of wet earth and pine, rich, wild, different from home. Thyra kneels and presses her palm to the ground. Every new shore is a promise and a warning. She murmurs. The men begin unloading the ship, barrels of water, sacks of dried meat, tools, spare weapons. You help, working silently, your breath visible in the chill air. A fire is built near the tree line, small but steady. Smoke drifts upward in thin spirals. Someone begins to hum softly, a wordless tune, low and ancient. As the flames catch, the chief gathers a handful of soil and tosses it into the fire. A simple ritual, a greeting to the spirits of this place, a request for peace. You watch the smoke twist toward the sky. For a moment, it seems to form shapes, hands, faces, memories. Then it's gone. When night falls, the camp grows quiet. You sit beside Thyra, staring into the flames. She hands you a small piece of bread and a slice of dried fish. This is what most journeys are, she says. Not battles, just hunger and the will to keep moving.
You nod. Your body aches from the storm, from rowing, from sleepless nights, but there is a strange calm, too, the kind that comes only after exhaustion, when fear has nowhere left to settle. Across the fire, the men murmur in low voices. One hums the melody of an old saga, something about heroes, kings, and wolves. You recognize none of the names. It doesn't matter. All Viking stories sound the same in the end. Courage, loss, and return. You think of home, the long house, the smell of burning pine, the soft crackle of the hearth. You imagine the faces of those who stayed behind. Will they remember you? Or will you fade, like a name carved into driftwood, worn smooth by the sea? Thyra must sense your thoughts. She pokes the fire gently and says, if you want to be remembered, you must first survive. You look at her, the glow of the fire painting her face in copper light. Is that all we can hope for, you ask? She smiles faintly. It's more than most get. Later, when the others sleep, you stay awake, watching the embers pulse like a heartbeat. The wind moves softly through the trees, and somewhere in the dark, an owl calls once. You close your eyes and listen to the rhythm. Wind, breath, wave, silence. When you finally sleep, your dreams are filled with water and wings. You see yourself standing at the edge of another shore, years from now. Older, scarred, but still standing. The sea stretches before you, endless as always. And for the first time you understand. The voyage never truly ends. The first raid, fire, fear, and glory. Soft-spoken tone, dim atmospheric soundscape, crackling wood, distant sea breeze, rhythmic breathing.
The morning begins with silence, not peace, but the kind of silence that feels alive. You can feel it in the air, heavy and waiting. Even the gulls are quiet. The fire from last night has burned down to ash. The camp smells of smoke and cold iron. Thyra is already awake, sitting near the edge of the clearing, her sword across her knees. She doesn't look up as you approach. "It's time," she says simply. The chief's voice carries through the fog soon after, calm, measured, without ceremony. He names the village across the hill, a settlement by the river said to hold trade goods, livestock, and silver. You don't ask why. No one does. This is what the voyage was for. This is what all the training, the rowing, the sleepless nights have led to. Not glory, not heroism, but the quiet inevitability of the raid. You fasten your cloak, tie your boots, and check the small knife at your belt. You do not carry a sword today, not yet. Your role is to watch, to help carry, to survive. The group moves together, 20 men and 2 women, Thyra among them. The fog hangs low, curling through the trees as you climb the slope. The sound of the sea fades behind you, replaced by the quiet rush of the river ahead. You can smell smoke long before you see it. Not from fire, but from hearths, from cooking, from life. It smells human, warm, ordinary. And suddenly you understand the weight of what's about to happen. Thyra glances at you and whispers, "Don't think, just move when I move." The trees thin. The village appears below, a cluster of thatched roofs, fields of barley, a few wooden fences. Children run between huts. A dog barks. A woman bends over a wash basin, her sleeves rolled up, humming softly. Then the signal comes, a sharp cry, short and high, cutting through the morning air. Everything after that happens too fast and too slow at once. Men rush forward. The quiet becomes chaos. The sound of boots on dirt, the clatter of shields, the first scream. You freeze, just for a heartbeat. Then Thyra grabs your arm and pulls you forward. Go! You run, the ground uneven beneath your feet, the air filled with smoke and shouting. You see flashes, a roof catching flame, a man swinging an axe, a woman dragging a child toward the river. Your heart pounds so hard you can hear it above everything else. You stumble near the edge of a hut, your hand brushing the rough wood. The smoke burns your throat. A shadow moves, a man lunging from behind the corner. You fall backwards, instinctively raising your arm. Before you can cry out, Thyra is there. Her blade flashes once, clean, almost silent. The man falls. You stare, unable to breathe. Thyra meets your eyes, expression unreadable. Breathe, she says. You do. The smell of blood mixes with burning hay. The fire grows, crackling as it eats through dry thatch. The sky above the village turns dark with smoke.
Men shout orders. Some drag barrels toward the ship. Others drive livestock down the hill. A few still fight or chase. You stay close to Thyra, moving where she moves, eyes wide but focused now. It's not bravery that keeps you steady.
It's disbelief, a quiet part of your mind refusing to accept what your eyes see. At the riverbank, the water runs red in places where the current slows. You don't look too closely. By midday, it's over. The village burns behind you. The ship is heavy with loot, silver, grain, salted meat, even cloth. The crew speaks in low tones, neither triumphant nor mournful. Thyra washes her hands in the shallows, the blood running off in pink clouds. She doesn't look at you. "Did you kill anyone?" she asks quietly. You shake your head. "Then you've seen enough," she says. "That's worse." You sit beside her, knees drawn to your chest, watching the smoke rise from what was once a home. You think of the woman by the wash basin, of the child by the fence. You try to picture them running, escaping, but the images blur into flame. The chief orders everyone back aboard. No one argues. By the time the ship pushes off, the village has already begun to collapse under the weight of fire. The sea receives you again, calm as if nothing happened. The rhythm of the oars returns, slow, steady, almost gentle. You sit near the stern, your reflection rippling in the dark water. There's soot on your face, your hands, your cloak. The salt stings where smoke has cut your skin. You think about how easily destruction moves, how quickly something whole becomes ash. You expected to feel power. Instead, you feel hollow. Thyra sits beside you, silent. Only when the coastline fades behind the mist does she speak. "Now you understand," she says softly. "Glory doesn't feel like this." You look at her. What does it feel like? She stares out at the sea. Lonely. The ship sails on, the sun low, the air heavy with the scent of smoke. The men begin to sing, not loud, not joyous, but slow like a lullaby. The melody drifts over the water, soft as fog. You close your eyes and let it carry you, your thoughts heavy and distant. Sleep comes slowly, wrapped in the hum of oars and the whisper of the sea. And somewhere in that half-dreaming quiet, you begin to understand the truth of the Shieldmaiden's life. Courage is not in killing, it's in surviving what you've seen. By the time you return to camp, the light has changed. The fog has lifted, leaving the world washed in a pale gold that feels too gentle for what you've just seen. The shore is quiet, except for the steady lap of waves against the hull. The men unload in silence. There's no boasting, no laughter, just the slow, practiced rhythm of motion. Barrels roll across the sand, chests clatter shut. The smell of charred wood still clings to your hair, your clothes, your hands. When the last of the loot is set down, the chief nods once. No speech, no prayer. The raid was done, the gods had seen, and that was enough. Thyra disappears for a while. You sit near the water, rubbing your fingers together. The soot leaves black smudges that won't wash away. The tide creeps closer, reaching toward your boots, as if to remind you that everything returns to the sea eventually. Blood, smoke, sorrow. When Thyra returns, she drops something beside you. A strip of cloth, blue, scorched at the edges. "From the village," she says. "You should keep something." You hesitate. It feels wrong to take it. But you understand that refusing would feel worse. You nod.
folding it carefully. The fabric smells faintly of smoke and milk. "Do you ever get used to it?" you ask. Thyra doesn't answer right away. She sits beside you, knees bent, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The sea catches the fading light, shifting between silver and green. "You don't get used to it," she says finally. "You just stop being surprised." The words hang there quiet, but heavy. As night falls, the camp stirs again. Fires lit, food cooking, murmurs rising. The men begin to drink, to sing. Laughter starts to creep back, small and cautious at first, then louder, almost defiant. You watch them, detached. Their joy feels thin, like a fragile skin stretched over something darker. No one mentions the raid. They talk about the journey home, about repairs, about weather. Everything but what happened. Thyra notices your silence. "Eat," she says, handing you a bowl of stew. You take it, though the smell of meat turns your stomach. The first spoonful is ash and salt. You chew anyway. "Tomorrow we train again," she adds. You almost laugh, the absurdity of it. But then you see the truth in her face. There's no pause between violence and preparation. The line between surviving and fighting is too thin to rest on. Later, when most have fallen asleep, you walk down to the beach. The stars have come out, reflected in the dark surface of the water like shards of light. The air smells cleaner here, brine and wind instead of smoke. You sit where the tide meets the sand. Your reflection wavers with every wave. For the first time, you notice how much older you look, or perhaps how much more awake.
A thought comes, uninvited but clear. You have crossed a line you can never uncross. And yet, part of you feels stronger, not from the raid itself, but from enduring it. You think of Thyra's words, "You just stop being surprised." Maybe that's what strength is here. Not fury, not bravery, but endurance. A quiet agreement with the world that Cain will come, and you will remain standing. Behind you, the campfire burns low. The singing fades to murmurs, then to the soft rhythm of waves and wind. You lie back on the sand, cloak pulled around you, eyes open to the stars. The constellations are old friends. You know their names now, their paths. You trace one with your finger, the shape of Thor's hammer, and whisper a prayer. Not for victory, not even for forgiveness, just for peace enough to sleep. The sea answers with its own kind of lullaby, steady, ancient, uncaring. You close your eyes. The waves breathe in, out, in again. And slowly, the heaviness in your chest begins to ease. When you dream, you are back in the village. But it's empty. No people, no fire, no sound. Just the faint smell of earth and ash. You walk through the silence until you reach the river. There, in the water, you see your own reflection. Not frightened, not furious, simply still. You reach down, your fingers brushing the surface, and the image ripples away. When you wake, the sky is pale, the camp already stirring. The first gulls call overhead. You rise, your limbs stiff, your throat dry. For a moment, you expect to see smoke on the horizon, but there is only sea. Thyra approaches, adjusting the strap of her shield. "Come," she says. "The wind is changing." You follow her to the longship. The sail is being hoisted, red and white, patched from many voyages. The men take their places at the oars. You climb aboard, the wood warm beneath your hands. As the ship pushes away from the shore, you feel the familiar sway of the water beneath you. It feels almost like breathing again. Thyra stands at the bow, hair pulled back, gaze fixed ahead. She looks carved from the same wood as the ship, unyielding, unenduring. You watch her, wondering if she was ever afraid once, if her first raid left her shaking like you did, if, even now, she carries those ghosts with her beneath the calm. You suspect she does. You suspect everyone does, but no one speaks of it. That's the unspoken rule of the sea. The ship turns north, the coastline shrinking behind you. The waves grow higher, colder. The wind fills the sail with a deep, steady sound. The men begin to hum, that same low song from before. It's not a song of joy, but of rhythm. A way to keep the oars moving, the heart steady. A way to remind yourself that life, even after fire, must continue. You hum with them, your voice quiet but steady. Your hands are still sore, your thoughts still tangled, but the rhythm helps. In and out, in and out. The sea stretches endlessly ahead. You do not know where the next raid will be, or if you will live to see it. But for now, the water holds you, and that is enough. Long pause. Faint wave sounds fade to quiet. And so ends the Shieldmaiden's first taste of war. Not triumphant, not tragic, but inevitable. The beginning of a long, slow understanding that courage in her world was never clean. It was built from blood, silence, and endurance.
Winter of silence. Life after the raid. The long ship creaks into the harbor under a sky the color of pewter. The sea, gray and heavy, rolls like molten metal beneath the hull. No cheers greet your return, only the quiet shuffle of boots on frozen ground, the muffled sound of waves folding into the shore. Winter has already arrived. Snow clings to the roofs of the longhouses, and the smoke from the hearths drifts low, thick as fog. The villagers come out one by one, wives, children, elders leaning on sticks. They watch silently as the raiders unload their spoils, bolts of cloth, barrels of grain, a few trinkets of silver, a strange bronze cross from some church too far away to name. You stand near the prow, your fingers numb despite the gloves. The cold feels heavier now, pressing into your bones. Maybe it's not the wind. Maybe it's the weight of what you've brought home. Thyra's face is as unreadable as ever. She gives short instructions, this chest to the Jarl, that one to the temple, the rest divided among the crew. The men obey, eager to finish before the next snow begins. Someone laughs, but it sounds forced, brittle, hollow, the kind of laughter that tries to drown out memory. You walk back to your longhouse slowly. The door creaks when you push it open. Inside, the warmth hits like a wall. firelight flickering over the carved posts, the smell of stew thick in the air. Your mother looks up from the hearth. She doesn't ask what happened. She only nods and gestures to the bench. You sit, remove your cloak, and hold your hands over the fire. The flames blur your vision, and for a long time neither of you speak. Finally, she says, "You're home." And somehow, that's the hardest thing to hear. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. Every time you close your eyes, you see the village again. Smoke curling upward, a child's toy abandoned near the river. The sound of something breaking that isn't wood. You wake before dawn, heart racing, the air too heavy to breathe. Outside, the world is still. The snow has fallen again, covering everything in silence. You step into it barefoot, letting the cold bite into your skin until your pulse slows, until the noise inside your head fades to a low hum. The days that follow are long and slow. Winter in the north isn't cruel so much as endless. The sun barely rises. When it does, it's pale and distant, like a candle seen through smoke. You spend your mornings mending nets, scraping hides, tending to small fires that never seem to burn hot enough. The men who survived the raid drift through the village like ghosts, drinking, sharpening blades that will not be used again for months. Fyra visits sometimes. She sits by the fire, working quietly with her hands, weaving leather into something practical, straps, bindings, harnesses. She talks little, but her presence is steady, grounding. Once she asks, "Do you still dream?" You nod, every night. She hums softly, not surprised. "You'll learn to carry them," she says, "like the scars. They stop hurting when you stop asking why." You want to ask her what happens when the dreams stop altogether, but the words won't come. Instead, you return to your work, threading sinew through a cracked shield rim, pulling tight until your hands ache. By midwinter, the village has settled into its rhythm, the rhythm of survival. The feasting halls are quiet, except for the sound of wind through the eaves. Meals are small but warm, smoked fish, root vegetables, thick broth that steams against your lips. The children play near the hearth, their laughter muffled by fur hoods. Their mothers sew in silence, eyes half closed from exhaustion. Even the dogs sleep more than they bark. Each day feels like the one before it. There's comfort in that, in the sameness, but there's also something else, a dull ache beneath it all, like the body of the village itself is still healing from something unseen. The raid was not spoken of, not openly, but you can feel its ghost in every glance, every hush when the wind changes. Some men did not return. Others came back quieter. One lost an eye, another his laughter. You remember their faces clearly. Sometimes you think you see them walking through the snow, figures half visible in the mist. The elders say winter is when the dead draw closest. That's why the hearth must never go out, why the doors are marked with ash. Fire keeps the living and the lost apart. You tend your fire carefully every night, not out of fear, but out of duty. Some part of you knows there are debts to be paid, and warmth is the first offering. One morning during the deep freeze,
You're called to help repair a damaged roof. The storm from the night before tore loose a plank. You climb the ladder, the wood slick beneath your hands, breath misting in the air. From up there, the village looks smaller. Rows of longhouses huddled together like beasts, sleeping for warmth. For the first time in months, you feel something shift inside you. A sense of calm that isn't born from exhaustion, but from acceptance.
You think of the sea, of the fire, of Thyra's quiet strength. You think of how life always circles back, from destruction to rebuilding, from grief to endurance. And you understand now that this too is part of being a Shieldmaiden. Not just the fight, but the waiting. Not just the battle, but the silence that follows. Down below, a child waves at you, grinning through missing teeth. You wave back. The gesture feels strange at first, light, almost free. When you climb down, the air feels softer. The snow begins to melt around the edges of the roofs, and a few drops of water trickle down, catching the faint light. It's not spring yet, but it's coming. That night, you sit with Thyra by the hearth. She passes you a cup of warm ale, and for a while you both watch the flames in silence. I used to think battle was the hardest part, you say. Thyra smiles faintly. It's not. You wait. It's this, she says. The waiting, the remembering, the keeping everything going when it would be easier to let it fall apart. You nod slowly, and in that moment, something inside you settles. The noise of guilt, fear, and fire fades to a low hum, not gone, but quieter. Outside, the snow falls again, softly this time, almost kindly. The village sleeps, the sea breathes, and in the flicker of firelight, you realize that you've become part of this rhythm, not the chaos, but the calm after it, the quiet strength that keeps the world from breaking. You are not only a warrior, you are a keeper of silence, a bearer of stories no one tells aloud, a Shieldmaiden not of war, but of memory. And that, in its own way, is the bravest thing of all. The Weight of the Gods. A deep, reflective section about faith, destiny, and mortality. The Shieldmaiden questions her gods after loss, recalling the oaths, the rituals, and the sacrifices made for glory. It's quiet, philosophical, exploring what strength means when the war is over and the songs fade. The Sea Beyond Sleep. The closing chapter. Years later, she returns home, older, softer, haunted, but peaceful. She becomes a storyteller, her memories blending with myth. In the end, she fades into the sea, not tragic, but serene, becoming part of the eternal tide of stories and sleep. The Weight of the Gods. The wind has grown quieter now. It moves softly across the fjord, whispering along the wooden beams of the hall. Outside, the sea no longer rages with the fury of war, but breathes like a creature asleep. The Shieldmaiden sits by the hearth, her hands resting on her knees. She has known the sound of the sword, the scent of fire, the taste of victory and ash. And yet, in this stillness, it is not battle that feels heavy, it is belief. She stares into the flame, as if it were an eye. The firelight flickers against the carved faces of gods on the posts around her, with Odin with his single eye, Freya with her necklace, Thor with his hammer raised high. These faces have watched her since childhood. They were there when she lifted her first weapon, when she bled for the first time, when she took her first life. But now they feel distant, not carved into wood, but into memory. The village is quiet tonight. Only the crackle of the hearth answers the creak of the roof in the cold. Every winter feels longer than the one before. The warriors speak less. The songs they sing are slower, their voices rough with age. Sometimes I wonder if the gods themselves grow tired of hearing them. She remembers the old seer who came once to the village long ago, before her first voyage. The woman's hair was white as frost, her eyes clouded like storm glass. She said every warrior carries two burdens, the shield they hold and the fate they cannot see. One can be dropped, the other cannot. At the time the Shieldmaiden had laughed, she was strong then, filled with the fire of youth. Fate felt like a story for the weak, something told to explain why men fall when they could have fought harder. But now, sitting here in the stillness of her hall, she begins to understand what the seer meant. Fate is not something that happens to you. It is something that slowly gathers around you, like snow, soft, patient, and inevitable. Outside, the aurora shivers across the northern sky. The colors ripple like silk, green, blue, sometimes red, a dance of unseen spirits. The people call it the road of the gods, the bridge between worlds. When she was a child, she believed that if she stared long enough, she could see the gods walking there, great shapes of light, carrying their weapons of thunder and wind. Now she knows better, or perhaps she just knows less. She remembers the sacrifices, the ceremonies where the blood of animals ran over the stones, where the air smelled of iron and smoke. She remembers holding her sword above her head as the priest whispered the old words, swearing to fight with courage and die with honor. At the time, it had seemed sacred. Now those same words echo faintly in her dreams, hollow, like an echo inside an empty hall.
There are nights when she dreams of the battlefield. Not the noise, but the silence afterward. The stillness between heartbeats, when the world forgets to move. In those dreams, she stands alone among fallen friends and enemies alike. The ravens land quietly beside her, tilting their heads as if waiting for her to speak. And she cannot. Her throat fills with sand, her hands with frost. She wakes before she can answer them. She has seen too much to believe that the gods are cruel, but perhaps they are careless. The same storm that carries a ship home can drown another. The same wind that fills your sails can also tear them. The gods give, and they take, and they give again. It is not mercy, it is rhythm. Sometimes she wonders whether the gods even notice the small lives beneath them. Perhaps they do not. Perhaps that is why mortals tell stories, to remind the heavens that we were here. She looks at her sword. It hangs above the hearth clean and untouched for many months. Its edge no longer gleams. She could polish it, but there seems little point. It has done its work. The hands that held it are tired, and though her muscles still remember the weight, her heart no longer does. She has learned that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it sighs, sometimes it lets go. The children of the village still look at her with wide eyes when she passes, whispering that she once fought beside men twice her size, that her axe split a helmet in two, that she stood unflinching when others ran. The stories grow larger each season. She does not correct them. Let them have their legends. It is good for the young to believe that courage can be simple. She remembers the faces of those who fought beside her. Einar, who laughed even when wounded. Solvi, who sang before every raid. Little Farah, barely 16, who dreamed of seeing the sun set over lands far to the west. They are gone now, swallowed by time and tide. Their names live only in her voice, when she speaks them softly to the fire, as if to keep them warm a little longer. In the village, they still make offerings to the gods before voyages, a goat, a handful of grain, sometimes a small carving of wood. She watches the smoke rise into the cold sky and wonders if it reaches anywhere at all. Maybe the gods do not need smoke or blood or praise. Maybe all they ever wanted was to see us live as fiercely as we could, for as long as we could. She has come to believe that the gods are not up there, looking down. They are in the quiet moments, in the crack of ice, in the sound of waves, in the steady breath before dawn. They are the weight in your chest when you look at something beautiful and know it will not last. They are the warmth you feel when someone remembers your name after you are gone. She closes her eyes and listens to the wind again. It moves through the cracks in the walls like a ghost, brushing her cheek. She whispers a prayer, not of thanks, not of asking, just of acknowledgement, a wordless sound carried into the dark. It feels enough. She knows her story is nearly done. Her sword will pass to another. Her hall will echo with other voices. The sea will still rise and fall. The gods will still turn their eyes elsewhere. But tonight, she is at peace. The gods may be distant, but she has found her place beneath them, small, fleeting, and human. The fire sighs and settles lower. She draws her cloak around her shoulders and leans back, eyes half closed. The last thing she sees before sleep takes her is the faint shimmer of light above the sea, the bridge of the gods, moving slowly, endlessly, forever. The sea beyond sleep. The sea has always been there. Even before she could remember her own name, the Shieldmaiden remembered the sound of it, a low, steady breath that never stopped. It was there the day she was born, there the day she first held a weapon, there when her friends fell and her voice rose in song. It is there now, though her hair is silver and her hands are lined with the years that have passed. The world has grown quieter. The young ones in the village call her Eldred now, the Wise One. They come to her hearth in the evenings to listen, though she never calls herself wise. She tells them she is simply old enough to have seen how stories repeat, how even the fiercest waves return to the same shore. She smiles when they ask for tales of war, though her voice is slower now, and the fire crackles louder than her words.
She tells them of the early raids, of the long ships that sliced through fog like knives, of the singing and shouting and fear, but she softens the edges, reshaping the blood and fire into something gentler. The children do not need the screams. They need the rhythm of the oars, the whisper of the wind. So she gives them that, a lullaby of iron and salt. When the children leave and the hall grows still again, she sits in silence. Outside, the tide creeps in and out like breath, washing the stones smooth. She knows that one day soon they will stop coming. They will grow into their own lives, their own stories, their own battles. That is how it must be. Every tale begins by forgetting another. In her sleep, she dreams of her comrades, Einar, Solvi, and Thora. They are young again, laughing as they walk across a meadow that glows with impossible sunlight. The air smells of seaweed and pine. None of them speak of death. None of them carry weapons. The dream is not about war. It is about arrival. When she wakes, she feels no sadness, only a kind of softness, as if the dream has left its warmth behind. The days pass slower now. She no longer lifts the sword that hangs above her hearth. Sometimes she traces the runes carved into its handle with her fingertips, feeling the small grooves worn by her younger hands. It is strange to think that this cold piece of metal once held her life inside it. It has killed, protected, and honored her. Now it is only a memory that catches the light. One afternoon, when the sky is the color of pewter and the air smells of rain, she walks to the shore. The path is uneven but familiar. Every step feels both heavy and light, like walking through a memory. The wind tugs at her cloak. The gulls cry above her, circling the cliffs as they always have. At the edge of the water, she stops. The sea stretches out endlessly, pale and endless, rippling with light. She remembers her first voyage, the roar of men, the sting of salt, the blinding joy of survival. She remembers the second and the third. She remembers the fear that followed her like a shadow. And she remembered the moment she stopped feeling it, not because she grew brave, but because she grew tired of being afraid. She kneels at the edge of the surf and places her hand in the water. It is cold, but not cruel. The sea does not judge. It takes everything into itself: shipwreck and treasure, victory and failure, the living and the dead. It is the only God that never demanded sacrifice, because it already owned everything. She whispers something to it, a prayer perhaps, though she is not sure what she believes anymore. It doesn't matter. The sea listens in its own way. The clouds drift low across the horizon, gray and slow. She watches them move until they blur together, sky melting into water. The world feels smaller than it used to, and yet infinite. Back in the hall, she sits by the hearth again, her cloak still damp from the mist. The fire burns low. She knows she will not light it again after tonight. She pours a small cup of mead and drinks slowly, tasting the sweetness, the years. Then she sets the cup down and begins to speak softly, not to anyone in the room, but to the air itself. She tells her story one last time, as she would to the children, simple, quiet, unharried. She tells of a girl born beside the sea, of how she learned to wield a sword, of the friends she loved and lost, of the fire she once carried inside her chest. She tells of the silence that followed, and how in that silence she found something deeper than glory. She ends the story the same way she always does. The sea remembers us all. It never forgets a single name. The flames flicker once, then sigh into darkness. She closes her eyes. For a long moment, there is only the sound of the wind through the walls, like a slow heartbeat. And then the sea begins to sing. It is faint at first, a rhythm of waves against rock, a whisper moving through the air. It fills the hall, the fields, the valley. It sounds like the breath of every warrior who ever lived, returning home. In her mind, she sees the long ship once more, the one from her youth, sailing across a horizon of light. Her friends stand there, calling her forward. The air smells of salt and rain. She feels no pain, no fear, no weight. She takes one last breath, and the world becomes the sea. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. And the story of the Shieldmaiden drifts quietly into legend. And so her story ends, not with a battle, but with a breath. The sea that carried her through life now carries her into rest. May her story remind you that even the fiercest souls seek stillness, and that every wave, no matter how far it travels, returns home in the end. Thank you for listening to Mild History. Wherever you are tonight, close your eyes, let the world fade, and drift softly into your own quiet sea. Good night.